My ex-wife's family tried to use their political power to take my son because he's neurodivergent. So he disappeared and started over. But now my ex, once ashamed of him, is back with a custody petition. I think her brother, the sheriff, and her parents are pulling the strings again. I didn't start this war, but I knew how to finish one. My name is Reed Harlan. I'm 41 years old, living just outside of Spokane, Washington, in a worn-out blue house that creaks every time the wind blows. My son, Caleb, is 7. He's got the kind of brain that makes math teachers call you at night, whispering that he might be one of those gifted kids, like it's a diagnosis. He also screams if the light bulbs are too bright or if someone honks a car horn too close. Sensory processing disorder, they call it. I just call it Caleb. We had a routine, me and him, up at 6:30, oatmeal with bananas, earplugs in the backpack, noise-canceling headphones for school fire drills. He had a chart taped to his closet door with little pictures, brushed teeth, put on shoes, zip jacket. Structure kept him calm. Me too, if I'm honest. His mom, Danica, walked out when he was 3. Said he was defective. Said I was turning him into a neurotic little disaster. She was a senator's daughter, raised in the kind of house where feelings were considered rude. I remember her saying once, he just needs to toughen up, while Caleb lay on the floor with his fingers jammed in his ears because a balloon popped at the grocery store. That was the last real conversation we ever had. Danica's brother, Marcus, was a sheriff, the kind who still called kids soft if they cried during thunderstorms. Once, when Caleb was 4, Marcus babysat for an hour. Caleb had a meltdown because of the thunder, screamed until his voice gave out. Marcus locked him in the car to let him wear himself out. In August, in Washington, windows up, my neighbor saw it happen and called me. I got there before anything worse could happen. But that was Marcus, always riding the edge between reckless and cruel. I should have seen it coming. Last spring, Marcus offered to take Caleb for ice cream. Caleb was excited. He thought maybe Marcus had changed. I had a weird feeling but didn't want to say no. I let him go. He didn't take him to get ice cream. He drove him to a shooting range, left him there with a confused instructor and a loaded sensory nightmare. Caleb wandered into the parking lot in tears, clutching his ears. I picked him up 10 minutes later after the instructor called me. No injuries, thank God. But it shattered Caleb's trust. Again. Then came the bombshell. CPS, Child Protective Services. Marcus filed a report accusing me of neglect. Said I was endangering Caleb by not preparing him for the real world. Said the shooting range incident was a test, and I'd failed. They almost took him away. We went through 6 weeks of inspections, interviews, and unannounced visits. Caleb stopped sleeping through the night. Started stuttering again. I thought we were done. Then I got the letter. Danica's lawyers. Full custody motion. Psychological claims. Evidence of emotional instability in child due to parental indulgence. They called his meltdowns proof. His calm chart? Coddling. His gifted math skills? Obsessive tendencies that made me an unfit parent. It was a coordinated attack. Marcus, Danica, and their parents, political elites with high-priced lawyers and zero empathy, launched a full-scale campaign to take Caleb from me. I hired the best lawyer I could afford, a woman named Kendra Witt. She told me, they're going to use Caleb's neurodivergence against you. You'll need more than love to win this. So I got ready. I found Dr. Soren, a behavioral specialist who understood kids like Caleb. I kept records, routine logs, therapy notes, meal charts. I turned my whole damn life into a defense file. We weren't going down without a fight. Caleb asked me one night, why do they want to take me away? I looked him in the eye and told the truth. Because they think being different is bad, but we're going to show them they're wrong. He nodded slowly, then said, we'll need a plan. I smiled. Already got one. That was the night we started practicing courtroom words. He liked learning them. Judge, objection, testimony. He made flashcards, drew diagrams, built mock-ups of courtrooms out of cereal boxes. That was the night my 7-year-old became a warrior. And that was the night I stopped being afraid of them. Court is like a stage, Caleb whispered, except you don't clap at the end. It was the morning of the hearing. He stood by the front door in his navy hoodie, hood up, sleeves tugged over his hands. His noise-reducing earbuds dangled around his neck. I had ironed his khakis twice, even though I knew he'd sit on the floor the second we arrived. Structure helps. So we structured everything. We practiced for weeks. Courtroom vocabulary flashcards. A visual map of the building. I'd walk him through mock routines every night. Wake up. Eat toast with butter. No jelly. Ride in the car. Walk through the metal detector. Wait in the hallway. Then speak when called. I even laminated his comm chart with pictures, deep breath, count 4 corners, hold dad's hand, water sip, safe word, meteor. It was taped to the inside of his folder. He had color-coded tabs for everything. Blue for dad's testimony, yellow for Dr. Soren's behavioral notes, green for what he called feelings evidence. I didn't know what that meant, but he said, "Trust me, it matters." Kendra met us outside the courthouse. She nodded at Caleb with a small smile. "Ready to change the narrative, little man?" He looked up at her, then quietly said, "I'm not little. I'm exact." The judge's chambers smelled like lemon disinfectant and coffee. Danica's parents were already there, seated stiffly in the front row like they were attending a fundraiser. Danica wore a cream-colored dress and soft curls. She looked like she had stepped out of a political ad. Marcus sat beside her in uniform, looking clean, polished, proud. His smile didn't reach his eyes. Danica's lawyer, some guy named Hollister, was the kind who said things like child welfare optimization and parental deviation concerns. He spoke first, laying out the allegations with the kind of politeness that stabs you in the throat. Mr. Harlan has demonstrated an inability to provide normative discipline. The child, Caleb, displays frequent emotional disturbances, including screaming fits, resistance to authority, and recorded incidents of aggression in school settings. He presented 3 pieces of evidence. A written complaint from a teacher about Caleb crying during a school assembly with loud music. A file noting that Caleb once bit a classmate who pulled off his headphones. A video clip of Caleb panicking during 4th of July fireworks and hiding under a bench. Danica looked away during the clip, like it embarrassed her. Then it was our turn. Kendra laid it out in quiet, surgical detail. Reports from Dr. Soren, who had spent months observing Caleb. Behavioral evaluations, diagnostic letters, evidence of improvement, logs of routines, patterns, triggers, coping strategies, photos of Caleb calmly working on his math charts, statements from his occupational therapist and speech pathologist. Then came the key moment. "Caleb would like to speak," Kendra said. The room shifted. The judge, a wiry woman in her 50s, adjusted her glasses. "Are you sure?" Caleb nodded, walked to the chair without hesitation, sat down, placed his calm chart on the table like it was sacred, then opened his folder. He began reading. "My name is Caleb Harlan. I am 7. I have something called SPD, which means I hear more than other people. I feel more than other people. It does not mean I am broken." He looked up at the judge. "My dad doesn't punish me when I scream. He helps me find the quiet." He flipped the page. "On July 2nd, I bit someone because they took off my headphones. That is not aggression. That is protection. I am allowed to protect myself. You could have heard a pin drop." He went on, calm, precise. He read from a printout of the Washington State Child Welfare Code, highlighted by color. "A child's difference in emotional regulation shall not be considered abuse or neglect." Then, he looked at Danica. "I am not defective. You just didn't want to understand me." The courtroom held its breath. He looked back at the judge. "I do not want to live with anyone else. My dad listens when no one else does. He helped me name my fear. It's called being alone." I had to look at the ceiling to stop the tears from spilling. When he finished, he closed the folder, took a breath, and said, "Thank you for letting me use words." The judge leaned forward. "You did very well, Caleb." He nodded. "I practiced, and that was it. No meltdown, no panic, just a boy, his folder, and the truth." The judge ruled in our favor that same afternoon. Full custody awarded to me. Restraining order issued against Danica's family, Marcus included. Caleb didn't react much in the courtroom, just whispered, "Does that mean we go home now?" I nodded, and he held my hand all the way to the car. For the first time in months, I thought we could breathe. But peace has a short shelf life when your enemies have power and money. It started subtle. A silver SUV parked across from our house on a Wednesday afternoon, engine idling. 2 men in suits pretending to check directions on their phones. The next day, Marcus's patrol car rolled slow past Caleb's school. No call, no reason, just an empty drive-by. Then came the shadows. Not literal, but it felt that way. The woman sitting across from us at the library, pretending to read while taking photos. A man at the grocery store who stood too long in the cereal aisle next to Caleb, pretending to study ingredients while keeping one eye on us. Caleb noticed. "Why are they watching us?" He asked me one night while we brushed our teeth. "They're just being nosy," I said, gently, "but they can't come near us anymore. Remember the paper the judge gave us?" He nodded, but the worry stayed in his eyes. Our routines began to fray. Caleb stopped sleeping through the night. He'd wake up and check the locks, whispering, "Are they going to take me?" I'd sit by his bed until his breathing slowed. I called Kendra. She confirmed what I already feared. They're building another case, but this time they're being smarter. No false CPS reports, they're gathering expert opinions. On what? I asked. Your parenting, his schooling, anything they can twist. And then Danica showed up, unannounced, standing on our porch like it was just another Tuesday. Caleb was at school. I opened the door but didn't invite her in. She looked different, smaller, Less armor, more makeup. I need to talk to you, she said. I crossed my arms. Talk fast. She took a breath. They're saying I need to reclaim custody. That it's the only way to protect my career. They want me to look maternal again. Like I care. You don't. I don't know anymore, she admitted. But I didn't ask for this second lawsuit. My father, Marcus. They say if I don't file, I'll look weak. Complicit. Then don't file. I already did, she said, almost ashamed. They drafted it. I just signed. I wanted to slam the door right there. But something in her voice stopped me. They hired expert witnesses, she continued. Some from his school. People who've never even talked to him. They're saying you isolate him. That you limit his social growth. They're painting you as obsessive. I stepped outside, closed the door behind me, and looked her dead in the eyes. You tell your family I don't break. I've been for Caleb. That's it. She didn't answer. Just nodded. Then walked away. That night, I told Caleb. I had to. He pulled out his comm chart, pointed to the last square, talked to Dad, then added a new one under it in blue crayon. Write everything down. He said, if they want fake stuff, we'll give them real stuff. Data. Like spies. I didn't smile. Not yet. Caleb started carrying the notebook everywhere. A black field journal with a red elastic strap and a corner chewed from nerves. I didn't think much of it at first. He was always scribbling things, numbers, countdowns, rocket designs. But this was different. Structured. Methodical. Is that for math? I asked one night after dinner. No, he said, flipping to a page marked Tuesday, 3:37 p.m. This is for proof. Proof of what? He looked up at me like it should be obvious. That we're not lying. I didn't push. Maybe I should have. Because while I spent nights pacing with legal pads and court strategy, Caleb was building a war chest of his own. Dates, times, weather conditions, who said what clothes they wore, who blinked too fast. He logged everything, visits from teachers who asked strange questions, subtle comments from neighbors, the time his music teacher said, your dad doesn't let you hang out much. Huh? I only realized how serious it was the night before the hearing. He brought the notebook to the dinner table and slid it next to my plate. I ranked them, he said. I opened it. Each page had a red star system. 1 star for unimportant. 5 stars for emergency level lies. Some pages had audio timestamps with Ask Diane how to play this. I stared at him. You recorded things? He nodded. Only when it felt weird. Dr. Soren said I should trust my gut. Diane was our contact from the private intel firm, an ex-FBI investigator who took us on pro bono after Kendra called in a favor. I had no idea Caleb had even met with her more than once. The next morning, he was up before me, fully dressed, hoodie zipped, notebook clutched to his chest like a shield. He sat through breakfast in silence, not nervous, focused. Is it time? He asked. Almost. At the courthouse, the gallery was packed. Marcus sat behind Danica, arms folded like a man watching a football game he already knew he'd win. Danica wore pale blue. She looked calm. Her lawyer, a different one this time, sharper, smoother, open with rehearsed sympathy. Your Honor, our only concern is the child's emotional well-being. Mr. Harlan, while well-intentioned, has created an environment that prioritizes predictability over adaptability. Caleb's social struggles are not being addressed. They are being enshrined. They introduced witnesses. A school counselor who'd only met Caleb twice. A psychologist who hadn't evaluated him but wrote a review of observable behaviors. A teacher who said I discouraged field trips, which limits peer bonding. Kendra objected to most of it. The judge allowed enough to make me sweat. Then they called Caleb. I tried to stand. Your Honor, you shouldn't have to. He requested it, the judge said, surprised. Insisted. Caleb walked up with his notebook. Didn't sit this time. He opened to a flagged page and spoke directly to the judge. I have been recording things because adults don't always tell the truth. He flipped to a page with a red 5-star mark. This is from May 12th. Marcus came to our house. He didn't knock. There was movement in the gallery. Marcus shifted. Danica froze. Caleb reached into the notebook pocket and pulled out a small voice recorder. Hit play. We'll get you out of here, Caleb. It's not safe with him. You just have to say the right things. We'll keep you somewhere quiet. Somewhere better. The courtroom gasped. Caleb let it play for another few seconds. My blood ran cold. I didn't answer him, Caleb said softly. I just wrote it down. He paused. Because I'm not the one who's confused anymore. Marcus tried to stand, but his lawyer yanked him down. Danica looked like she'd been slapped. The judge leaned forward. Please submit that into evidence. Kendra did quick, calm, professional. Caleb walked back to our table, sat next to me, and whispered, now it's their turn to be scared. And for the first time, I saw it. Not just the brilliance in him. The fire. Court recessed for lunch. But nobody ate. Not really. The room emptied in slow motion, like everyone was afraid to be the first to move. The audio clip hit harder than anyone expected. Kendra whispered that the judge looked visibly rattled, which, in legal terms, meant we were winning. Danica didn't come back right away. Marcus left through a side door, face like stone, avoiding reporters outside. I stayed in the hallway with Caleb, who sat cross-legged on a bench, drawing a rocket-labeled evidence launcher. His notebook rested beside him. That's when Danica approached. No makeup now, hair pulled back. She looked less like a senator's daughter and more like a woman who hadn't slept in 3 days. She stood in front of me, eyes red, hands shaking slightly. "Can we talk?" she asked. I didn't move. "If it's about more lies." "No," her voice cracked. "No more lies." She sat down on the bench across from Caleb, but kept her distance. Caleb looked up, wary. Danica gave him a sad smile. "Are you still afraid of me?" he asked, voice steady. She blinked hard. "I'm afraid of myself." We sat in silence for a beat. Then she looked at me. "They manipulated me," she said. "I knew Marcus was a bastard, but I didn't think. I didn't want to think he'd go that far." "You signed the suit," I reminded her. She nodded. "I did. Because my father said if I didn't, I'd be the reason Marcus lost his badge. That the press would spin it as unstable mother chooses silence. That I'd lose any chance of ever repairing my image. You chose image over your son." "I know," she said. Her voice broke. Caleb stopped drawing. He was watching her now. Danica looked at him, her whole face trembling. "I'm sorry, Caleb. I'm sorry I wasn't brave enough to be your mother. I was scared of how different you were, of how much I didn't understand. But I see it now. You're not broken." I was. Caleb studied her for a long time, then said, softly, "You can't unsay it." "I know, but I don't want you to disappear," he added. "Just not be in charge." Danica laughed through her tears. "That's fair." She turned to me. "I'm withdrawing the case. Today. I already told my lawyer. I'm moving. Out of state. Maybe farther. I need to put distance between me and them." I didn't say anything. I didn't trust myself to speak. I don't want custody. I don't want shared weekends. I don't want to fight anymore. I looked at her carefully. "So this isn't a trick?" She shook her head. "It's surrender." Caleb stood, walked over, and gently handed her a blank page from his notebook. At the top, in big block letters, he had written, "What I need to feel safe." She stared at it like it was gold. "You can start there," he said. Danica nodded. And just like that, the storm began to break. 2 days after Danica withdrew the case, I made the call. Activated. I told Diane. Everything we talked about. Diane Harper was the kind of woman who didn't ask twice. Former FBI. Now head of a boutique private security firm that specialized in people like us. Targets of influence, custody battles with powerful families. People who needed to disappear without looking like they ran. She didn't say, "Are you sure?" She just said, "It's done." By the end of the week, we were ghosts. New names. New IDs. Caleb picked the last name, Hunter. "Because hunters observe before they act," he said. I got a new driver's license, new social security number, even new educational records for Caleb. His old school file, with all its flagged comments and neurodivergence notes, was sealed. Gone. His new one listed him as homeschooled, highly gifted, no behavioral concerns. The system couldn't help him. We'd built our own. We left Spokane on a foggy Monday. It took 4 hours just to get out of the state, Caleb in the backseat with his notebook, labeling a hand-drawn map. Exit point Alpha, restroom stop Delta, snack inventory update. He wasn't scared anymore. He was thrilled. "Are we like agents now?" he asked, halfway through Oregon. I smiled. Something like that. Our new city was small. Off-grid, but not rural. Just the kind of in-between place where people didn't ask many questions, and everyone minded their own business. I rented a modest 2-bedroom house near a public park. It had a porch with chipped paint and an overgrown lawn. Perfect. I'd lined up remote work using an alias Diane helped create. Coding, data analysis, quiet jobs. Invisible jobs. Caleb's schedule stayed almost the same. Routines, charts, checklists, but we added new things, freedom to explore without eyes on us. We got burner phones. Diane taught me how to sweep our digital footprint clean. VPNs, scrubbed metadata, alternate email servers. Caleb learned fast. Too fast. "Can we call this Operation Meteor?" he asked one night while coloring in his field log. "Because meteors disappear, but they still exist. Just in space." I wrote it down on the inside cover of his new binder. Operation Meteor. Status, active. The only people who knew where we were, Diane, Kendra, and a trauma therapist Diane recommended, someone in network, who met us once a week via encrypted video call under a fake name. I told Caleb the truth in small doses. "We're safe now, but it doesn't mean they've stopped looking." He didn't flinch, just drew a little radar screen in his notebook, with a single green dot in the center labeled, "Us." He paused, then drew 3 red dots far outside the circle. "Marcus." Grandpa, Grandma, he said. Still out there. But getting colder, I added. He nodded, then turned the page and drew stars. Our new apartment sat at the edge of a quiet neighborhood, nothing fancy, just siding and creaky floors, but it had good light in the mornings and a view of a slow-moving creek. Caleb liked to sit by the window and chart bird activity. We built the new life piece by piece. The first thing I did was set up a fresh routine. Same structure, new rhythm. Morning walk, math hour, reading corner, therapy call on Tuesdays. We even made a new calm chart. Caleb insisted on drawing it by hand this time, coloring each step with pencils from a tin labeled Agent Supplies. He adjusted faster than I expected. Within 2 weeks, he had mapped the entire neighborhood, which streets were quietest, where the cats liked to hide, which houses had dogs that barked too loud. He taped the map to the wall by his bed and updated it nightly. Then came Maya. She lived 2 doors down, quiet girl, maybe 10, same black hoodie every day, usually with headphones on. She saw Caleb walking by with a clipboard and asked, "Are you doing recon?" He blinked. "Observation grid," he said. She shrugged. "Cool." Then handed him a broken walkie-talkie and said, "Let me know if you fix it." They weren't loud friends, but they started walking together after school hours, pointing at trees, trading jelly beans, swapping books about spy codes and encryption. Maya liked coding. Caleb liked algorithms. It fit. Meanwhile, I started rebuilding myself. I took Diane's referrals and found a local trauma counselor who spoke in plain English. I saw her every Thursday. I didn't talk about war or combat. I talked about Caleb, about fear, about what it means to raise a boy the world wants to change. "You're not just rebuilding," she told me once. "You're fortifying." We also met with a legal specialist, someone who confirmed that the hunter identities were airtight. No digital footprints, no crosslinks. Every piece of us that existed in the Harlan name was now firewalled behind a dozen legal barricades. But still, Diane sent periodic warnings. "Your old in-laws haven't given up. They're poking around. Nothing close. But they're restless." I read each report with clinical calm. Distance helped. Caleb didn't need to know all the details, but he saw the tension. One night, he looked up from his notes and said, "They won't find us." I nodded. "Not if we're careful." He added a new label to his neighborhood map that night. "Safe zone verified." Then taped it in red at the top. "Hunter territory." A year passed like a slow river, quiet, steady, watchful. By then, Caleb's maps had moved from paper to digital. He coded an entire archive system with Maya's help, complete with alerts and folders marked suspicious vehicles and unusual comments. Most were empty. He still checked them twice a week. I thought he'd forget with time. But Caleb doesn't forget. Then, one Tuesday afternoon, a package arrived. No return address. Just our new last name, Hunter, typed clean on the label. I didn't open it right away. It sat on the counter like a grenade until Diane confirmed it had come through her secure drop. "Don't worry," she said. "It's not a threat." Inside, a single meteorite fragment and a letter. The rock was smooth, gray-black with flecks of iron. Caleb turned it in his hand like it was a relic from another planet. The letter was short, in careful cursive. "Caleb, I saw this and thought of you. I'm not asking for anything. Just sending a piece of the sky for a boy who saw everything more clearly than I ever did. I'm teaching now. Middle school science. Trying to do better with other kids. Tell your dad thank you for protecting you from all of us. Even me. Love, Danica." I watched Caleb read it twice. Then he folded it carefully and placed it in the back of his notebook. He didn't say much. "Are you going to write her back?" I asked. He shook his head. "Maybe later. Maybe when I'm ready to ask her about gravity." I didn't press. That night, he cleared a space on his shelf and built a display case out of an old cigar box. Lined it with black felt. Labeled it, "Meteor, Origin, Unknown." That's how Caleb processes forgiveness. Slow, quiet, on his terms. A week later, Diane called. Her voice was sharp, but satisfied. "Marcus is done." "What do you mean?" "Official indictment. Wire fraud. Misuse of department funds." Whistleblower inside the sheriff's office finally got tired of his power games. I closed my eyes and let the words sink in. "No connection to you," she added. Clean break. The air felt lighter after that. Not safer. Just settled. We didn't celebrate. Caleb just added a red dot to his radar map and drew a line through it. Target status. Neutralized. Later, I found a new drawing on the fridge. A picture of our first apartment. Tiny, cramped, with a window that creaked when it rained. He'd sketched it from memory. Underneath, in block letters, he'd written, "Where Dad taught me I'm not wrong." I stared at it for a long time. Not perfect, but peace. 3 years later, we lay on our backs beneath a night sky so dark it looked painted. We'd driven 6 hours to a certified dark sky reserve in southern Utah. No cities, no light pollution, Just an endless dome of stars blinking overhead like ancient signals waiting to be decoded. Caleb adjusted his telescope with the care of a surgeon, then scribbled something in a weatherproof notebook labeled Night Recon. Orion Session Number 4. Star movement's different here, he muttered. Less interference. I smiled from my sleeping bag. That's kind of the point. He was 10 now, taller, still wiry, still wore hoodies in summer, but his voice had deepened a little, and his shoulders didn't flinch at every sudden sound. He still used his comm chart, now digitized on a tablet, but rarely needed the emergency routines. He built a little world around observation, not defense. Do you think we'll ever have to run again? He asked, still peering through the scope. I considered lying, saying no, giving him a storybook ending. But Caleb was never built for easy answers. Not if I can help it, I said truthfully. He nodded like he'd expected that, then looked away from the stars. I'm not scared like before, he said. Not of them. I turned to look at him. What are you scared of now? Missing things, he said. Signals, patterns, people pretending to be safe when they're not. He paused. But mostly I'm just curious now. That stuck with me. Because curiosity was something we had to fight for. It wasn't natural after everything we'd been through. Fear had tried to replace it, make him shrink, make him invisible. But here he was, under a blanket of stars, asking questions instead of hiding from answers. Then let's stay curious, I said. He adjusted the telescope again. And hidden, that too. We lay in silence for a long time, listening to the quiet hum of the earth. No sirens, no flashbulbs, just crickets and the occasional shift of wind over dry rock. Caleb reached into his bag and pulled out a sketch pad. Began drawing the sky, one constellation at a time. He labeled the biggest one Safe Zone Alpha. Later, as he curled into his sleeping bag, he whispered, let's stay hidden and keep watching the stars. I whispered back, always. And for the first time in a long time, I believed it.